Hi everyone, it's Mora Atara. I want to continue learning today about the Sanhedrin. We started last week discussing the Sanhedrin in general. I want to review a few of those details, and then I want to go into the first location that the Sanhedrin met in. Let's begin reviewing a little bit. The Sanhedrin was a group of people. The word Sanhedrin means sitting together. It was a group of people that would sit together. They came after the Anshe Knesset Hagadola. After the Anshe Knesset Hagadola, that great court stopped meeting. Then we had this group of people that came together to meet and make laws called the Sanhedrin. Who led the Sanhedrin? There were two leaders, but the leader that we're going to discuss is the Nasi. That was the civil leader of the Sanhedrin. The first Nasi was Hillel Hazakin, and the last Nasi of the Sanhedrin, in the last place the Sanhedrin met, was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. The last Sanhedrin compiled and put together, organized the Mishnah. Now let's start discussing where the Sanhedrin met specifically. If you look at the map here of Eretz Yisrael, the Sanhedrin met in 5 different locations. The Sanhedrin met in 2 locations in Yerushalayim. It then met in the south in a place called Yavne. It then moved to the north to a place called Usha, and then a place called Sipori. Don't worry if you don't remember everything I just said. We're going to learn about each stop that the Sanhedrin made. Let's begin with the first stop. The first stop is Yerushalayim. The Sanhedrin started off in the Beit HaMikdash itself, and then later was moved out of the Beit HaMikdash, but still stayed in Yerushalayim. I put this in big and blue over here. We're talking about the time of the second Beit HaMikdash. So what was the Sanhedrin like? What was it doing when it was in the second Beit HaMikdash? Let's see. There were 70 people ruling in the Sanhedrin, and there was also the Nasi. The Sanhedrin was the high court, and it only dealt with the most important cases. If someone had a small, minor case within their city, that didn't go to the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin only tried the most important cases. Where in the Beit HaMikdash did the Sanhedrin meet? It met in a place called the Lishkat Hagazit, which is a hallway. It was a beautiful hallway that they would meet, and that's where they were all sitting together. Probably not like a hallway you're thinking of in Westchester Day School. Now, when the Sanhedrin met in Yerushalayim, that showed that Yerushalayim was the center of the world. That showed that that was the center of the Jewish people, since that's where the high court was meeting. That's where all of the rules were really being made up. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the song, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah Udvar Hashem Mirushalayim. This is from a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Parak Bet, pasuk Gimel. Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah Udvar Hashem Mirushalayim, which means Torah will come from Sion, from Israel, and the word of Hashem, Udvar Hashem Mirushalayim. What this is showing is that Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash really became the center of life for the whole nation of Israel. Another important point that we know about when the Sanhedrin met in the Beit HaMikdash is that the most important cases, as in the cases that there might be a death penalty, those only were in the hands of the Sanhedrin when the Sanhedrin met in the Beit HaMikdash. The most important cases could only be judged in the Beit HaMikdash. The Sanhedrin could only try cases in which there might be a death penalty when it met in the Lishkat HaGazit, because that was the most important place that the Beit HaMikdash met in. Unfortunately, we are going to learn about that there's going to be many problems in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore we're not going to be able to meet in the Beit HaMikdash anymore. To review, let's take out the sheet from our Mishnah binder that's titled Sandrin Bebeit HaMikdash. This sheet is going to help us review everything that we just learned in the video. Let's begin working on this sheet together to review. The sheet says, Vatchila Eifo Haya HaSanhedrin. What was the first place the Sanhedrin met in? Fill out the answer on your own. The next question says, Ma Asu HaSanhedrin. In general, what was the job of the Sanhedrin? Remember, the job of the Sanhedrin was to deal with the most important cases. What was the name? The next question says, what was the name of the place in the Beit HaMikdash that the Sanhedrin would meet? Turn back to the slide that says it met in the hallway called the Lishkat Hagazit. How many years, we didn't discuss this really, how many years, for hundreds of years, the Sanhedrin met in the Lishkat Hagazit in the Beit HaMikdash. And this was all in the time of Hillel HaZakin. Now in Yeshayahu, Parak Gimel, Parak Bet, Pasuk Gimel, you can leave out this little line right here. The Pasuk says, Ki me'Tzion tetzei Torah udvar Hashem miYerushalayim. Which means, and you can write on this line right down here, Torah will come from Tzion and the word of Hashem from Yerushalayim. That means that Yerushalayim will always be the center of the world. And the last bullet point that you need to add in the information is about is what did we talk about the death penalty? About the death penalty, we said that all cases involving the death penalty only existed, could only be tried by the Sanhedrin when the Sanhedrin met in the Lishkat Hagazit. After that, the Sanhedrin couldn't try these cases. Soon the Sanhedrin is going to leave the Beit HaMikdash because there's going to be a lot of problems. And from that point on, they won't be able to judge the Jewish people fairly, and therefore they won't be able to decide about the death penalty. I want you to fill in this spot, who was the Nasi at that time? If you notice on the back wall, we talked about the poster that was in school. On the bottom of that poster, it says, Chachamim me'oto dor. Who were other great rabbis that lived at that time? Shammai, Menachem, and Ziknei Batera. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the other rabbis, but you'll see as we go on, a lot of the names might be familiar to you. This concludes the video. Please bring your sheet to class. I look forward to seeing you then.